Welcome to the This Could Make Us Famous podcast. You've heard all the stories of the rich and famous. But what about everybody else? Some of the greatest and funniest stories come from everyday people. Here, we share their stories and just maybe make them famous. Let's get started. Here is your host, Jason McCormick.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Jason, your host. And today, man, it's a good day because I've been trying to get this guy over here on the show for a long time. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome, I don't know your last name, but...
it's Paul Weiss, but...
Paul Weiss to the show.
What's up? This can make us famous. Thanks for having me on, man. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be over here, man.
Yeah, and when we get to our little introduction about you, I wanted to explain to everybody how we met, a little bit of backstory. But also in the show, we have a familiar face over there.
I'm familiar.
The beautiful, incredible.
Yes, beautiful.
Daniel Ferreira.
Yes.
Is that how you say it? Ferreira.
Yep. That's
Ferreira. Spanish?
Yeah, Portuguese, actually.
Wait a minute. So I thought you were from Brazil.
Well, my great-grandfather from my dad's side is Brazilian. My dad's Paraguayan.
Paraguayan.
Yes, and my mom's Colombian. Yes.
So Paraguayan and Colombian, where did that, I don't know. That's kind of weird. I'm thrown off because how do you get that?
How did I get what? My last name?
Yeah.
Well, because my great-great-grandfather's from Brazil, and Brazilians, a lot of them are Portuguese.
Okay.
So before that, my great-great-great-grandfather, Marco Ferreira, he came in from Portugal.
Portugal.
It almost sounds like a sports car, your last name.
Right?
His last name is a sports car. He actually can speak, how many languages?
4.
Four.
Nice.
Yeah. I'm
That's
learning
ridiculous.
a 5th one. Yeah.
I can barely speak English, so that's pretty incredible. You know what's funny is like in the United States, I've noticed that a lot of Americans, we speak English and that's it. I mean, yes, there's a lot of, Americans that can speak they're like bilingual, but most Americans, I would say, just speak English.
See, but like most people give Americans flack for that, but like French people are the same way. French people refuse to learn any other language besides French. Like a lot of my European friends, whenever they go to France, they'd be like, "Oh, like, do you speak German?" No. It's like, "Do you speak Spanish?" No. Do you speak English? No. What do you speak? No. French. It's
French.
like, okay.
So is it true? I mean, you've been to France, right?
I've never been to France.
Okay,
I wish I could go to France. That'd be nice.
Well, I've heard that they kind of have a problem with Americans. They don't really like Americans, but that's just what I hear. I've heard for so many years, but
see, so I have my fair share of like having European friends, and the stereotype is that they think that we're like dumb, which was really funny because my European friends and I were playing this like game or whatever. We were trying to like name all the European countries, and it went down to me and this Norwegian guy. And Norwegians are apparently like really smart, And then I won, and then he everyone was just like shaming him, and he felt so embarrassed. And then he's like, "I lost to an American." I'm like, "Wait, what's the big deal about this?" He's like, "Americans are typically stupid." I'm like,
whoa,
sorry,
hey, come
what?
on now.
I'm sorry, what?
And that's when you should have popped him right in the mouth.
No, his loss was enough. Like, I don't think he needed a popping.
So have you traveled out of the country or?
I've been out of the country once. I've been to Aruba.
Oh, okay. That's is that in South America?
I mean, it's near it. It's on an island. I forget what part of the islands, but it's close. I honestly forget. It's like a 3-hour flight from Philadelphia is where we flew out of, and it's beautiful, man. Gorgeous island.
Yeah, I've had friends that have gone there for their anniversary and for their wedding. What do you call it?
Honeymoon.
Honeymoon. Yeah. That's pretty cool. I heard it's extremely beautiful. But I've only been, unfortunately, landlocked, so I've been in the United States, and that's it.
Nothing wrong with that. There's a lot of beautiful spots out here, man. Utah's my favorite. So
yeah, and you guys were talking a little bit about like what Oregon and like California and stuff. How beautiful!
Yeah, no, it's really beautiful. And Oregon, oh my gosh, Oregon and Washington. I did a road trip to Washington for my birthday last year, and it is so beautiful over there. Like the mountains are incredible, the rivers, forests. Like the U.S. has a lot of very beautiful places.
It is. It's a big, like, there's so much, like, you go to different parts of the country and you get a little bit of something different, So that's pretty amazing to me. I mean, I've been all clear across from east to west and north to south, all the way up to almost Canada, all the way down to Texas, all the way to California, all the way to Washington, D.C. So it's beautiful.
Yeah, you've seen a lot.
I've seen it all, man.
Yeah.
Just about. And I've seen most everything in 2020.
Nice.
Just all in one year, man.
All flying or driving?
No, I'm talking about just the craziness.
No, that's right.
So, yeah.
That's right.
But we won't go there. 2020 is out of the question now. We're done with 2020. Now we're into 2021, and oh my God. But anyways, I wanted to kind of share with everyone how I met you.
Sure.
So they know who you are, because we just did a real quick run through. And yes, this is Paul. And I don't know if you noticed on his shirt, on his sweater, he is a part of a podcast. You started it, right?
Yeah, I did.
It's called Talk Junkies.
Yep.
And it's kind of funny how this all turned out, where we ran into him. So me, Charlie, who's also on the show a lot, Daniel's filling in for him. We went to a restaurant one night just on a whim, and you were our waiter. Mm-hmm. And at the very end, you dropped like this little... I don't know if you, I guess, did you want us to subscribe, or, because I do the same thing. Like I let people know, and usually they're like, oh, that's cool. And it never goes anywhere. But he's like telling us about his podcast. And then I lit up. I'm like, oh my God, there's another person out there locally that has a podcast. And so I told him about ours, and yeah.
Yeah, no, it was strange, man, because normally I don't do that to like tables, like random tables. So just one of those things, man. It was just like a needle in a haystack kind of thing, where I just dropped it there, and then you and I, we literally talked for like 45 minutes. It was crazy. Just
yeah, it was legit.
How much we enjoy doing it and how beautiful this type of stuff is.
I'm sorry about our crappy tip, by the way. We're just kind of broke. We don't make money on this podcast.
Oh, man, it's all good.
after we were talking and we connected and stuff, I'm like, oh man, I'm not one of those guys that are able to drop like a 50 or 100. What's the most you've ever gotten?
$100 tip. I've been doing it I've served for 10 years, then was a general manager for 3 years, and then stepped down recently to spend more time with my family. And it was actually one of my best friends who tipped me $100, man. And that was this year, in 2020. So it took like 13 years for that to happen. But
wow. Well, hopefully you get more hundreds. Hopefully the podcast grows enough to where you don't even have to do the serving thing anymore.
Exactly, man. That'd be dope. But honestly, I mean, serving's not too bad. It's really good money.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've heard from people that they've made like a couple $100 in one night. Just like if you work at a really nice restaurant, at a bar, like bartenders apparently make really freaking good money. So just depends on the bar, of course. But,
right.
So, but yeah, that's how we met. And then we just kind of been trying to work everything out to connect and for him to come on the show. And I've been following your podcast, and I encourage all the listeners out there, if you guys want to hear some good content, these guys, I love hearing you guys talk, because you're so good at like working together, like communicating and like just talking things out and bouncing off of each other. It's pretty amazing how well you guys work together. So
yeah. So at the beginning of the podcast, we had quite a few different people on the show, Jesse and I, some of our friends, just to kind of see how it would mesh and stuff like that. And, Johnny actually moved in with Jesse somewhere down the road, and Jesse's like, hey, man, I'm just going to bring Johnny on the show. I hope that's cool. And I'm like, yeah, man, 100%. And Johnny's the guy right there with the glasses. And I appreciate that, man, that what you say, those kind words. It's just good to hear, because we work extremely hard, man.
Yeah.
And I think it's just honestly because we're all best friends. We just get along.
And that's what makes it work, right?
Yeah. I mean, politically, we're definitely not anywhere near the same.
I noticed that on some of the shows. I'm like, I know who, where everyone stands, but it's for the most part. I like how you stay pretty neutral on things, but you do drop a little bit sometimes of like your point of view on something, but you try to stay neutral on certain subjects. And I think you mentioned to me like one time that you're not like liberal, you're not like fully conservative, you're just kind of in the middle, which I think
teeters the fence, man. People don't like that,
fence.
But
it teeters the fence.
Luckily for my sake and YouTube's sake, that's the best way to be, is on the fence. If you're not.
Yeah, and that's what I mean, because when you step out boldly, which another topic I'm getting ready to get into is your recent guest you had, which I'm excited about, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, is you just got to be careful what you say, because just like that, you can be taken off of any social media platform.
Yeah.
So and
thousands of accounts, the past year, Patreon, all of it, man. YouTube, iTunes, all of it.
Yeah, a lot of content creators are going through a lot right now. And I got some friends of mine that they do like stuff for fitness on Facebook. They're like fitness trainers and nutritionists, and their Facebook accounts just got stripped.
Really?
I think because they had an American flag in their videos in the background.
What?
I mean,
crazy.
overnight.
Are you kidding
I'm not
me?
joking, dude.
For having an American flag in the background.
Overnight, just like that. And then I got a friend request from them, and I'm like, dude, I'm already friends with them. Typically in those situations, that's because someone stole their account or created another account with their picture, and they sent you a friend request. So I rejected the friend request, and then I went and looked. I'm like, holy crap, this is really them. And so sure enough, they came out and said that somehow Facebook just deleted both of their accounts.
That's insane.
They didn't get an explanation why?
No.
Wow.
What?
I don't think so. I don't think. I think they might. I remember seeing something about possibly like an American flag in the background.
Yeah, because normally they'd come out with like a terms of service type
Right.
of thing. Like, hey,
Yeah.
what you did broke our terms of service, and this is why this happened.
Yeah, that's just ridiculous. I mean, fitness. Come on.
Yeah, it's
There's a
And-
guy we had on our podcast a while back, man. He's hardcore QAnon and stuff like that. And, looking back on it, wasn't probably something that we should have done. But, I was on Facebook, and a lot of his followers were like, yeah, we've been shut out of Facebook for a couple weeks now. And they just got reinstated, which is, he's QAnon, which I know they're really big about taking that off. But hopefully they get their accounts back, man.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, I thought we lived in the land of the free where we can have freedom of
Yeah.
speech. But the messed up thing is like you can speak freely as long as it's their point of view.
Yeah.
And that's messed up because I, for one, I have friends from every walk of life. I have friends that believe things that I don't believe at all, and I'm downright against completely. But I still would go and hang out with them. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm open-minded, and I respect people and their opinions and their different views, even though they're different than mine.
100%.
So what about you? How are you? I mean, obviously you got friends that have different viewpoints than you, and you're
Yeah.
able to push things aside, right? I mean,
I don't know. I guess like I just talk to them about the stuff that got us to be friends, and I kind of just leave like all the other controversial
make
stuff
sure you
alone.
stay in the mic
Sorry.
because it cuts out in editing, and then like it's just like I'm like,
But
gets
like
tricky.
I just leave the controversial stuff alone, because it's like, okay, if I know this is gonna make them mad, why am I gonna talk about something that I know is going to make them
Trigger
mad,
them, right.
Like to me that would be, it just doesn't make sense for me to bring that up,
Right.
Yeah, it just doesn't make sense for me to bring this stuff up in conversation. I do have friends who are like hardcore liberal, and I just don't talk about that stuff, It's like, okay, why don't we just talk about your new plants and your kitten, and your new art business? We'll talk about that,
Right.
And
It's funny how you say that because that's how I feel is like, when did we get, what would you say would be the point where everything became about politics? Because,
Right.
that I remember a time in my life where we didn't give a crap about politics. It's like we wanted to go to concerts and hang out with our friends and talk about our favorite bands and favorite this and that. And it didn't involve around politics, or at least very little.
Yeah, I think the way that they've been able to polarize certain, public figures to kind of make it that way. I mean, especially with Trump, and you bring him in and you say Orange Man bad, and he does all these crazy things. You know what I'm saying? And
Right.
they bring him to be this person that is polarized, and then you have a negative aspect towards Donald Trump, then you have a positive side.
Right.
And anyone who's over the age of 18 or, as an adult, like back if I was 18 and Trump was president, I probably would have been like, wow, like this is crazy.
Right.
This dude used to be on a TV show and all this other stuff. And I would probably be a little more in tune. So I don't know, man. They just polarize certain figures, and they've been able to make it political. And that's just one small facet of it, honestly, in my opinion. But
A lot of young people, that's what amazes me is just to see really, really young people so passionate about politics. I will say this. I mean, a lot of them don't quite know everything about it because they couldn't tell you how how our political system works and the different branches of government and how they work. But they got behind what was popular, a movement, and a lot of younger people, they want to get behind something that seems to mean something, and they don't even know why. It's popular to hate Donald Trump. because that's just what you do.
Yeah, without knowing anything that he's done.
Yes, and you wouldn't even like. I love watching the YouTube videos where they go like walking down the beach with a microphone, and they'll say something that Obama or someone else said.
Yeah.
And they'll say that it was Trump, and be like, "Oh, that's horrible. That's absolutely horrible." And then, "Oh, that was actually something Obama said." And they're like, "Oh, what?"
That's hilarious.
Got you,
I
buddy.
love those videos, man. Those never get old.
Yeah. I mean, people find clever ways to reveal stupidity, basically. I mean, how dumb people can be or how clueless they could be to what's going on around them. So, but, I just want to see our country unite. And right now, I think with, everything, how it played out, I hate that they're trying to go forward with the impeachment. I think that's insane.
Oh, are they really? They're going forward with it?
Oh, buddy, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
they're like they want to prove a point, but the problem is they don't have enough. I think what is the percent you have to have of Senate? There's a certain amount of
Like 70-30 or something like
yeah,
that.
there's a higher percent that has to vote to impeach, and that's just not going to happen, at least at this point, because they only have 5, so they need like 14 senators, I think, to change their vote in the Republican Party, and it's just not going to happen. So,
Yeah. But like, why are they going to impeach someone who's not even president anymore?
well, and that's the
So
whole.
he can't run in 2024.
yeah, they don't want him
But
to
it's
run.
like, but you can't impeach him if he's not president right now, right? Like, that doesn't
Well,
make sense.
that's the whole point. That's the thing that people are talking about right now. Can you impeach a civilian? Like he's not the president anymore. So they're basically going to be doing something that it's never been done before.
Yeah.
And it's wrong. And in a lot of people's eyes, they think this is messed up. Like the dude, he's gone. He's out of office. Like, let's just move on. But it's like trying to tear off a scab, like just let things be, because what they're doing is they're just trying to revive something. Just let it be and let's move forward. But like he said, like Paul said, it's just they're trying to prevent 2024, the inevitable.
It's not only that, but look at the ratings that a lot of the news media had when Trump was in office, and how polarizing he was, and people are in tune to what Donald Trump is. So this is a continuation, in my opinion, just to keep Donald Trump in the news cycle. It's something for them to talk about. It's something to keep us divided,
Right.
as opposed to being united, like you suggested.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously we've heard the Bible talks about a house divided against itself can't stand. And I think it applies the same to our country. If we stay divided, we're going to fall. And I think there's a couple countries at the top of my head that I can think of that would love for us to fall right now. And I think there's a specific country I'm thinking of that is probably playing a huge role in what's going on right now. But I think, we gotta unify. We gotta come together. We gotta stop, because I look at it this way. There will always be Republicans, at least for a long time. There will always be Democrats, libertarians. We can't forget about them, and the Green Party. So those people are always going to be here. And unless we learn how to accept each other's differences and just, get to know one another. I mean, I know there's a fine line, because I try to be so open-minded, but there is a point where I have to be careful too, because, one party wants to take the country a completely different direction than the other party.
Yep.
So it's like, we could still be friends, but there are two different agendas here. Like, what way do we want the country to go?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a good question. I don't think any of us know. I mean, if you look at it, I think it's becoming one with AI. Like, you look at Elon Musk and what he wants to do by
Right.
2030, and have the neuro implant that goes into your brain to make you part of the AI. And I know you're going to mention it, but having David Icke on and getting his
Yes.
input on what he thinks, what the future holds, I think that's ultimately the goal, is becoming one with AI. And we talk about transhumanism a lot in our podcast, and that's the next step. That's the evolution of human beings. Like, we're not going to evolve how we should over hundreds of thousands of years. We're going to skip a step and go straight into transhumanism. You know what I'm saying? I think that's the agenda that
Right.
they want to see. I don't know about the Republicans, but
Right. Well, and there's a lot left to be said. I mean, we really don't know. I mean, I would have never even imagined any of the crap that went on in 2020. I mean, a year ago, if we would have said all this stuff was going to take place, no one would have believed you.
No.
They would have laughed in your face, been like, you're one of those Alex Jones conspiracy theorists or David Icke.
Right.
So anyways, talking about David Icke, dude, you guys scored an amazing interview with the legend himself of conspiracy theories, I would say.
Yeah.
David Icke. I've saw his content or his videos years ago, and he's very polarizing. I mean, he knows what he's talking about. And people may not agree with him, but he at least knows what he's talking about. You don't feel like he's a fool or he's, that's what I love the guy. I think he talks about 9/11. He talks about all these different conspiracies, and he's got information to back it up, which is the best thing about it. So I wanted to ask you, first of all, how did you even land this? Are you able to talk about that?
Yeah, man. I just, podcasting is just something I really enjoy, and I love just connecting with people that I've never met before. So a big part of what I do is, once a week or once every other week, I just literally get on Google and I just start emailing people, man. That's just cold calling, basically. And I'll look to find what their email is, and I'll send them an email. There'll be times where I'll email 100, 200, 300 people and not get a response back. It's just when you get that one response back. And
oh my God. So what was that? What was it like when you got the email?
Oh man, dude. So I had emailed David, I want to say back in November, and it was like right before Thanksgiving. And
oh my gosh.
I think he has an assistant or something like that had emailed me back and said, hey, yeah, David's going to come on in December, December 15th, so I was like, all right, dude, this is awesome. So I was ecstatic, man. Wow. I was trying to hold it in, not tell everyone, but I did tell
you didn't tell me. That's cool.
Yeah, I told a few of my buddies, man.
Yeah.
And so December 15th rolls around, or like 2 days before, and then I get an email saying, hey, David's just been really overwhelmed. He's not going to be able to do the podcast with you. So just shoot me an email 1st of January. So in my head, I'm just like, man, is this really even David Icke? I'm just starting. I'm like, this dude's not going to come on my show.
Some other guy named David Icke.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And so I emailed back in January 1st, and he agreed to do the show. And if you get on YouTube, and when you do a search on YouTube and you look at the upload date, he does a lot of interviews with a lot of different people. So he's a very fantastic guy trying to spread his message, and he'll help people out.
Wow. I would love to get him on there, but I don't know if I'm confident enough yet. I mean, when I started this podcast, I'm like, hey, Paul, hey. But yeah, no, dude, like I was just freaking out because, I check in on your content on your channel and just see like what you guys put out every week. I mean, you guys do a podcast every week, right?
Every
Sunday.
Yep.
So, and then I saw like David Icke. I'm like, what the heck? Like he has freaking David Icke. So who's next?
Yeah.
Or can you tell?
No, I wish
You got some good guests lined up.
I wish I did, man. Been procrastinating, honestly, the past few weeks. So I'm still working on it. It doesn't come easy. Again, it's a lot of cold emailing, I guess you could say, just email. I like to do a lot of repeat guests, people I've had on before. So hopefully maybe Neha Kapoor from Australia. She's a psychotherapist that she might be coming back on the show.
Wow.
And just, stuff like that. Anyone who's an expert in their field who's willing to spread their knowledge to our community. That's what I'm all about.
That's awesome, man. I love that. So that's basically that. What you just said is what your podcast is about. Like you want to bring in experts in their field and then give them the opportunity to share about those subjects
and just have an informal conversation,
right.
Very laid back, relaxed. And, I'm kind of the footwork. I find all these people, and Johnny and Jesse are the intelligence behind the podcast because they're just very. And I mean, if you listen to Johnny and Jesse, you'll hear it, man. Like Jesse, in my opinion, Jesse just has a very wide variety of questions that he can ask someone a question that they've never been asked before. Someone at that level, and I think that's what makes our podcast good.
Yeah, it is. It's solid. And I've noticed. Who's the one in the middle that's been missing?
Jesse.
That's Jesse.
Yeah,
he's been missing. So I know it's like there's that microphone in the middle, like
that shrew getting unused, man. I'm like, Johnny, you want to use that mic? He's like, no, man, I'm good.
You should just do like a cardboard cutout of him and just like, sorry, bro, the Chiefs won. This dude's not going to be in for a little while.
Sounds like a great idea.
Which, by the way, congratulations to the Chiefs. Do you want something else to drink? We got some more over there.
Yeah, I'll go grab another.
Yeah. So Daniel, he's going to get something to drink over there. I should have left it all over here, but man, what do you think about everything that's going on right now, just with the censorships, the new presidency. Do you just try to stay out of all that? Like,
honestly, like my opinion is that this whole month is like Hunger Games. Like that's all I could think of. Like just seeing like the whole storming of the Capitol. Like I'm like, this is hunger. This is catching fire. Like this is what's going on. And then like, because I never heard of QAnon until this month. Like I didn't know like that. I don't know squat. You know, until like there's this whole craziness of Parler getting blocked. And I'm like, what is this, 1984? Like,
right.
What the heck is going on? Are we like, you know, like, what's happening with this country? Like, privacy? Like, y'all want to control everything? Like, what's with these double standards everywhere?
Right.
Like, this is like Hunger Games. We're entering to Hunger Games at this point.
Pretty much.
And then, like, freaking John was explaining to me what QAnon is and some of the things they believe in, and it's like what they think Trump's going to do. I'm like, that's literally the ending of Hunger Games. What you just told me is the ending
And that's
of
probably what it was.
Mockingjay.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like this one chick who like replaced the evil president. She's like, oh, I'll be the substitute president. And it's like, clearly she was planning on being the president forever, you know, and she showed that she was just as bad as the other guy because she wanted to, like, you know, have the kids from the Capitol compete in similar games as like the other kids had to. And so it's like, this is, you're basically the same thing.
Yeah, it's the Hunger. Yeah.
So then the chick, the main character, she voted for her to go through with her plan so everyone can see that she made her plan, and then she killed her right at the execution of the other president. So instead of executing him, she executed her.
Right.
And you know, I'm like, this, what you're describing with the whole Biden Trump thing, what the QAnon people think, this is just mocking. This is the ending of Mockingjay. So basically, you're telling me that we're entering to Hunger Games, or people think we're entering to Hunger Games. I don't know. Or maybe that's what the QAnon want. Maybe that's where they got the ideas for their stuff.
Yeah. Well, my introduction to QAnon was the whole Wayfair crap. You remember that?
Oh,
What's
man.
Wayfair?
Oh
That
my
was crazy.
God, dude. And I'm not going to lie, okay, guys? I have to admit it. I got sucked into it, and I was just intrigued by, like, could this be possible? Like, they're selling human beings through the Wayfair website?
Wait, what?
You don't know anything about that?
A lot of what you guys talked about, I don't know squat about. Like I said before, I didn't know who QAnon was until this month.
I don't really even know who QAnon is either. Like, to
Nobody
me-
knows who QAnon is.
Like when I first saw it, I thought it was just like the ancient spelling of Canaan because it's spelled with a Hof,
Right.
you know, so that's a Q. So I'm like, oh, Qanon, like okay,
Right.
it's named after Canaan. Then I found out I was very wrong. It's something completely different.
Something interesting about it, Anomaly, he has a YouTube channel on, or Anomaly is a YouTuber as well. He has a
Yes.
lot of great videos, and he came out with one, and he does a lot of good research. And what he was saying is that even 100 years ago, you know, or back in the early 1900s, this is what they would do. The government or whoever it may be will come out with a disinformation campaign, someone like QAnon, to feed people a belief that's never really going to come to fruition, right? So, and it's all disinformation. You know, there's probably some truth to some of it, and maybe really not at all. I don't know, because I don't really listen for the Q drops. You know?
Sure.
But that's what governments do. They'll feed, you know, the Republicans what they want to hear, then they'll feed the Democrats what they want to hear, and then it keeps them at divide.
Right.
They're really good at that, man. That's what they've been doing for so long,
Exactly.
and that's what's going to make it hard to break off of that.
Right. And, you know, so to kind of share with you about QAnon, about that whole thing, they were selling cabinets on Wayfair, and they had the names of people that were trafficked, like
Yeah,
people that were
missing children.
And the cabinets were insanely priced. I don't know, like $10,000 to $15,000,
Yeah.
and then the same cabinets were hundreds of dollars. You know.
Yeah.
So there was this big conspiracy. It blew up overnight, dude. It was freaking
I know what
everywhere.
you're talking about. Okay,
It
that
was
was a conspiracy
everywhere.
thing. Okay.
Yes, and so I got sucked in, and I'm like, oh my God, dude, this does make sense. It's brilliant on their behalf. Like they're totally doing this in plain sight. And then you go down the rabbit hole of conspiracies, and like Paul said, like I think what happens is, you know, people just go too much into it, and there's a little truth to some of it, and I think there might be some truth to something like that, and it may not even be Wayfair. It could be like a different website. I don't know. And but we do know this, that there is human trafficking, which is horrible.
A lot of
Yeah.
missing kids every year.
A lot of missing kids, and I, you know, being a father myself, I'm like, oh my God, dude, I can't even imagine. Like, I think if your child went missing, it would be worse than them dying, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Because the unknown, you know.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, there's so many conspiracies, and I try to, like with Alex Jones, I was a huge fan of his, and he really started getting out there, really, really far out there. And I noticed it started changing me, and I started becoming angry. It was changing me as a person. And I was arguing with people about the conspiracies that he had. And I'm like, there might be some truth to some of this, but I need to just kind of back off a little bit.
Yeah.
And just not jump all in on this stuff. And some things you'll just never know.
The craziest part about Alex Jones, man, and he's been on the Joe Rogan podcast,
Yes.
I think twice in the past year. And he's recently been on the Temple podcast. But the last time he was on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan's moved over to Spotify, so there's a lot of things he has to do to be careful. And if he says the wrong thing, obviously they weren't happy that he had Alex Jones on. But in the end, before he left to Spotify, he had the one with Alex Jones, and they fact checked him the whole podcast.
That's stupid.
But he was legit spot on, like 99%
He knew what
of the time.
he knew what he was
Anything
doing.
he was talking about, Jamie would just pull it up on spot in Alex Jones. You find the
Yeah, I
article that
remember
he's
that.
talking about.
Yeah.
It's like this dude is like you talk about. He has a lot of conspiracy theories, and I think back in the day, people really weren't holding him accountable, and he could just say what he wanted. But now he's like in the limelight, and like, hey man, we're listening to you. So what are you going to say now? And
Right.
what he's saying is like, dude, you can find the articles.
Yeah,
for what
they're
he's
out
saying.
there. The information's
Yeah.
out there. And I think that's the thing I appreciate. Maybe his delivery is a little harsh sometimes, but, I think when you get so passionate and convinced of something, I mean, he went to the Bohemian Grove,
Yeah.
which I think really triggered something in him.
What's the
because
Bohemian Grove?
Bohemian Grove is a place, and where is that? Like,
In California. Or
California. I think it's California, but it's this secret place where they do like rituals, like the elite go and they do like sacrifices and rituals, and
Oh,
he
that's-
snuck in there, and he had a camera, and it was creepy, dude. It was super creepy. So he blew that story wide open, and that probably, other than 9/11, that's probably what really got my conspiracy juices flowing. I was just,
Something's not right.
yeah, so there's so much to all the things around us, but there's a point where you just gotta use wisdom, because you could start thinking every single thing out there is a conspiracy, and that's what I used to do. I mean, every freaking thing that would happen to me was a conspiracy. So, did you get really into conspiracies in your younger years?
Oh,
or
yeah, man. Funny that you ask. That's I was probably like 18, 19 when I first watched Zeitgeist. Have you ever watched that?
I've heard of it. I don't think I watched it.
So I mean, for any 18 or 19-year-old to watch Zeitgeist, that's just going to blow the lid for the future of digging into the rabbit hole. And I partied hard, and I would just watch YouTube videos, not as much as I do now. And actually, man, I'll send you the link. Jesse and I actually did a podcast back when I was like 23. We did like
awesome.
we did like 6 podcasts, and it just never
So that was before the podcast movement went on.
Yeah,
then.
that was before it was trending.
Holy cow,
Yeah.
you're an OG, brother.
I know, man. Which is really weird. Yeah, it was back. I want to say I was like 23, 24, maybe even 22. But it's called News Radio 816 is what we called it, and we did like 4 1-hour podcasts, and it sounds just like we do now. It's the craziest part. Like we were saying the same stuff. But yeah, man, getting into the rabbit hole, it's deep. Eddie Bravo got me really hard into it as well, watching him on Joe Rogan. And you get really hard into it, man.
Yeah.
I was really a big flat earther for a while.
Oh, I
Yeah.
got some friends that are flat earthers.
Yeah. I'm not a flat earther, but what I will contest is that I don't believe we know what realm we're on. I don't know, man.
Sure.
I've never been into space. Some of the videos that I've watched, I don't know, but
Wow. Do you think there could be life on other planets?
it's a possibility.
I mean, think about it, man. I know this is a rabbit hole right here. We're going down a rabbit trail, but I'll tell you what, I've thought about it a lot this year. This whole universe. I mean, even if like I believe in God, I'm a Christian, but even with that, like, is it possible that God created other, like, how would we know that? Like, that God didn't create something else on another planet somewhere in another universe that we don't, like, there's people like us, maybe they're doing a podcast right now asking the same dang question. They're like, I wonder if, well, we're right here, man, on Earth. So,
Oh my gosh.
I don't know. And there we go down the road of conspiracies, but sometimes it's fun to talk about, man. Like,
Yeah.
you just don't know. Like, if you think about how vast the universe is, there has to be something, even if it's just an organism.
Yeah, listening to David last week, whenever he had mentioned just Saturn. And we were talking about cataclysms and stuff
Yeah.
like that that maybe have happened on Earth more recently than what we believe. And we also had a gentleman on named Howdy Mikowski, and he exposes the exposés in the world's fears back in the 1900s and 1850s. And what he suggests that he found is that there was a cataclysm in the 1800s, 1700s that we don't know about, and that before then humans were more synchronized. We were more one with each other. You know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the temples and cathedrals that you see, there's a lot of energy and vibration. And David Icke went on to further that information, saying that Saturn actually used to be closer to Earth, is what he suggested.
Wow.
Because if you look at a lot of the ancient writings, they talk about Saturn. Well, how did they know what Saturn was? Back in the Egyptian times. Granted, they built the pyramids, so if they wanted to look into the skies and see,
Right.
maybe
How would they know?
Exactly. So what he thinks that Saturn was actually closer to Earth, and some sort of cataclysm happened. At least that's how whenever he said it, that's how it kind of resonated with me. Which would just be nuts. Could you imagine Saturn being closer to Earth and just seeing how beautiful
Well,
it
we
is?
did just recently have, you guys remember that? The Saturn was in
Jupiter.
line with, or was it Jupiter?
Saturn, Jupiter, and Earth, maybe? There was 3 planets, I thought.
Yeah, or the moon? No, it wasn't the moon. Yeah, but yeah, it was Saturn and Jupiter, and Saturn has the ring around it. And some people were able to see that. I think I saw Saturn, but it was just like a little speck.
Oh,
It wasn't
looks
like
a star.
But some people actually saw, like, if they had a telescope, they could see the ring around it, and that's pretty cool, man.
So,
They-
like, what do you mean by like people wrote about Saturn? Like, are you saying that they could see like the rings or something?
Well, no,
or?
I think, and again, you'd have to listen to the podcast. It was like a little towards the end. It was almost 2 hours. But I had asked him just about his thoughts on a cataclysm that happened on Earth, recently or maybe back in the day that, put us in the direction that we're in now. Because I think that back in the day, again, like I said, we were more one with each other. There wasn't a lot of fighting. We could do things that we wouldn't think is possible right now. But you've seen a lot of ancient scripture. They talk about Saturn a lot, and just planets. And he does a lot better of an explanation than I would.
Yeah.
I listened to it like 2 nights ago. So I just listened to it. That's what I would say. I'm sorry, Daniel.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm the same
It was
way.
mind blowing, man, just how he described it. But
Yeah, no, I'm just like curious because like I'm all about like ancient history and all that stuff. Like I've read a lot about like different civilizations, the Harappan civilization, the Assyrians, the Babylonians, Sumerians, and the thing is like when it comes to them in astronomy, what they like consider a planet, because like for them they actually called a lot of cultures called planets stars because that's what they look like to them, and there's actually some planets that they were aware of but they kind of ignore them just because they move too slowly. So like they barely moved, and so because they barely moved, it's like why are we gonna track it if it's not gonna move at all? It's just gonna like it's just there, and like it's not, we're not gonna see it. So like, and those planets would have been like I think Uranus and Neptune, or like really faint, really slow. But then you have like Jupiter, Saturn, all the ones that are a little closer to us. Because they could track their movements, like, it'd be like, oh, this one is like right here at this constellation. Oh, now it's going to move over there. Okay, we're seeing this pattern throughout this many years. It moves, here to there. And so they would track the courses, and they would use that to like, keep track of like different kinds of like religious like rituals and whatnot and things of that nature. So for me, like even though they like written about this, like planets and stuff like that, it was just because that they observed them like moving, in this pattern. Like okay, they're always at this point at this like amount of years or whatever, and then that one's gonna be at that. And then some cultures like the Sumerians, the Chaldeans, they actually added like certain meaning to it. Like okay, well if this star is over at this constellation, that means this, and if this like Jupiter or whatever is over here, that means that. And their classification of like things in the sky were a little different from us. They actually like put the star, like those planets or whatever, the sun and the moon as like their own, like the same thing, like as the great luminaries of the sky, And the interesting thing is that in their minds, because the planets and stars were like almost the same category, except for planets moved around, Venus was considered the brightest star in their heads. So they believed that Venus was the brightest star, and they call it the evening star or the morning star because I think in the summer it's like you can see it at sundown, but then in the winter you'd see it like sunrise or something like that.
Interesting.
But yeah, it's really interesting stuff.
Well, I don't know a lot about space, but I know it's Uranus.
See,
That's a fact check, right? That is a fact, my friend. It's your anus.
I don't like that pronunciation.
I know.
It's
I had a lot of fun with that in science class.
Yeah.
Oh, I can
Seventh grade.
imagine. So.
Yeah, I might have gotten written up a time or two playing with Uranus, but sorry, that's ridiculous. I need to grow up.
Beautiful.
So usually on the podcast we do challenges and stuff, and I'm like, you know what? Let's just chill. I'm tired of doing the hot crap. I need to let my body just settle down, and let's just have a good conversation.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I wanted to one of my talking points for today, and I want to make sure I get through that before you end. How did you get into, like, what made you want to do a podcast? I mean, you mentioned that you had done it years ago with one of your friends, Jesse. What made you like want to do a podcast?
So for me, like being in high school and was into sports early, you know, like football and track and field and stuff like that. And it was almost like a blessing in disguise. When I was in ninth grade, I'd started my first A team. I was wide receiver. I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. This is going to be really cool. And I ended up breaking my wrist that game, the first game that I ever played. The coach didn't come up to me. He didn't like see if I was okay. Like they were like, I was literally laying on the field and they're about to start another play. And I'm like, no one here cares about me. It's like,
Oh
this
my
is,
goodness.
I was like,
That's so messed up, dude.
It's terrible.
I know. I literally had to get up off the field myself. My arm was like swollen like this much. And I go up to coach and I'm like, hey man, like this doesn't look right. And he's like, whatever. So then my buddy Zach's like, no man, like my parents are here. We were up in St. Joe. And he's like, well, my parents are going to take you to the hospital. So his parents took me from the game. We went to the hospital. But anyways, I think like that kind of showed me like, hey, this isn't what I want to do. So then I went in debate and forensics, and then I had my debate coach, Mr. Hughes. Honestly, like when you asked me that question, I think it was him. Like it was Mr. Hughes, man. He was just an inspiration to me in life on politics. Obviously, that's what debate's about. Student Congress, being involved in that. I got to go to nationals in my senior year, which was in Wichita of all places, like 3 hours away from here in Kansas. The next year was in Vegas. But anyways, after that, and then a couple years later doing it with Jesse again, like I think that's what kind of like, because Joe Rogan wasn't a thing back then.
Right, no.
And Jesse and I mean, again, I was a huge partier back in my 20s. And I was like, hey, man, like I watch YouTube videos, like let's do something. Like let's get our opinions out there. Let's get our voices heard. And I think that goes back to Mr. Hughes getting me involved in just what the world is today.
Well, you know what? Let's cheers to Mr. Hughes. Mr.
Definitely.
Hughes, thank you. Man, you just in your water. There you go. Yeah, we all have that person in our life that helped inspire us to do the things we do in our lives. And
What about you?
for me, getting into podcasting, I was definitely later on than you. I noticed that was a trend, and I was seeing it all over the place. And I'm not a good debater. I'm pretty terrible at it, but I love to talk, and my wife reminds me of that every day. I talk too much sometimes, and I love comedy. I love being funny. It just makes me feel alive. Like I was the class clown. So before YouTube there was no YouTube when I was in high school and middle school, but I did all the pranks and stuff that they did before it was famous. And I was thinking, man, I really like this. I love, I want to be able to create content, you know, like an artist that I'm creating something. I want to be able to just sit down and talk with some friends and have good conversation and laugh our heads off and show it to the world. Because I had so many times where me and my friends, we'd stay up late at night and we're laughing our heads off. We're like having a good conversation. And I thought, man, if people would just, if they would have seen this, they would laugh too. And that's what really put the idea in my head. And seeing like shows like H3 Podcast and Joe Rogan, of course, Tiger Belly, which is a little odd, but that's a weird podcast with Bobby Lee. But I really wanted to try it out. And so when I stepped into doing podcasting was exactly when the pandemic broke out in March. And I was really nervous because I didn't know how to do anything with audio. I didn't know how to do a podcast. I didn't know anything about lighting. I didn't know anything about filming. And I just was like, I just got to do it. You know, I just got to do it, jump out there, put content out there. And if you look at some of our old videos, like episode 1 with Justin, it was horrible, dude. Like the lighting was the worst I've ever seen on YouTube, actually. It was like harsh shadows. And when I look back at it, it's cringy, but I look back at it and I'm excited because I see the growth. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to delete it. I'm just going to just keep growing, keep putting the content out, and it'll get better and better. And I'll get better at talking and doing a podcast. And there's just so much to it, as you know, that so many people out there, you know, you get those haters that comment, they'll say something negative, and then I'll go and look at their page and they have zero content or very few subscribers, and they're extremely negative. And so I was watching YouTube videos on people that were talking about how to handle haters, and they said that the winners focused on winning and losers focus on winners. And
That's a good way to put it.
you know, so it's been a hard road, but that's how I got into podcasting. And I'm sure you've had those days where you just don't feel like doing it, and it's like the growth is extremely slow compared to the hours that you put into editing and, you know, putting the show together. So like after all this, everyone goes home, and then, as you know, you go to doing the editing and putting it all together and then making the thumbnail, and then you put it out there and you get like, you know, a couple hundred views or so, and then you do another one. So
And a lot of that is frustrating for sure.
very,
Because if we were just maybe 5 or 6 years early, like that, like, you know, YouTube has changed its algorithms, you know,
Right.
like on who they promote and who they make number one and what they see. But, and honestly, meeting you was like a blessing in disguise, because I was trying to search for that app forever on how to get my podcast out to multiple different networks without me actually having to do it by myself. And that was, again, though, I think God had put you in that specific moment
Right.
for you and I to meet each other. Just so I could, or not for only that, but for our relationship. But it was just for you to mention the fact that Anchor was a thing, man. Like it's hard work, it's fun, and there's the days that you don't want to do it. But then when after you do it and you get done, you're like, man, that was fun.
Yeah.
It was either a good podcast or it wasn't such a good podcast. Like me, Johnny, Jesse go outside. You're like, man, that was a shit podcast. That was just bad. That
have
was
you
terrible.
trashed any yet, though? Have
No.
you had to trash any? Okay.
No.
I've had to trash quite a few, and there's some that I put on that the camera completely cut out, and I just went. It goes like when I was in editing and post, it was like all of a sudden it just shows my logo and it says sorry, lost footage. I'm like, but that was then, and now I wouldn't do that. Now if I have like a really bad, like dragging, awkward ums and hums and
Yeah.
like, cause you gotta have, that's why I had you on, cause Charlie couldn't be here. Like having more people creates, there's not dead space, and it's,
Right.
Yeah.
and so, and that really makes for an awkward show. And I've had a few of them, and I tell people, I'm like, hey, no offense, but I didn't do a good job on the show, and I didn't have good talking points, and it was just real awkward. And so I'm just not going to put it out there because, and no offense to anyone that just puts stuff out there, because I understand that. But I feel like I'm taking things more personal now, and I only want to put the best that I can, but I also need to be careful with that too, because you can find mistakes all over the place. Like I could turn around and when I'm done editing, put this out and find all kinds of mistakes I made, and it's just not about that, you know.
Right.
It's about just being yourself.
Yep.
And that's I think that's what would make the best podcast, is when you can just be who you are naturally and have an organic conversation with your friends, you know, just talk about, you know, what's going on and what you feel about certain things, and keep it at that. But one of my biggest weaknesses, I think, is just having subjects and stuff. And I noticed you guys are really strong at that. Like when you, like, as soon as the show starts, you're like, you know, do you like have like a list of questions, or how do you
No, man.
build your show?
It's just what you just described, man. We're just very relaxed. Obviously, like, I mean, I stay up to date. I watch a lot of YouTube videos, and I wouldn't even consider that staying up to date, but I watch the people who I watch on YouTube, and I get a lot of my material off of that. And Johnny, Jesse will come over. I used to text Jesse, like, hey, man, what are we talking about next week? No response. I text him like 2 days later, like, hey, man, like, for real, like, I need some help. What do you want to talk about? And he'd be like, I don't know, man.
Right.
So, like, literally, man, like, they come over Sunday. They're like, Paul, what are we talking about? And I'll get online. I'll look at some subjects
Right.
and be like, hey, man, let's just hit these up and let's just see how it goes. Like, I don't really want to force anything. Like one thing I've learned, like doing the podcast, especially when you're talking about politics, is how fast politics moves.
Oh my gosh.
And not only that, just with the world today, how every story is just like, man, like if I'm gonna sit there and try and do a week in advance, like unless you have a really good guest on and they're an expert in what they're doing, like that, of course you need to prepare. But if you're gonna just do it, like, you know, like if it's just you and your buddy for next week, or if it's just me, Johnny, Jesse on Sunday, like again, things change so fast,
right?
And you don't want to be 5 days too late.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it too. Yeah, absolutely. Because like if I was like filming Alex Jones or somebody on my show, I'd want to be prepared for that. Yeah. But also, I like my personality as I usually screw up when I prepare. I don't know what it is about. Like I did the same thing like in school. Like when I prepared for things, it just I got so nervous that I second guessed myself, and it actually screwed me up on certain things. But I think whenever I just jump in and do something, I always do way better than because I remember me and Charlie earlier on in the podcast, I would have like this thing laid out, and I'm like, oh, we're gonna do this, and boom, 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 talk about that, and I just totally messed it up, and it just seemed scripted. And it wasn't me. And I think as you do that more, you would be able to do something scripted, but more naturally. But yeah. I think for me, though, I work so much better on a whim, like just having a random conversation and knowing how to talk into things that, you know.
Navigate the conversation.
Navigate the conversation, exactly. So
yeah, because there'll be instances where you can just start circling on subjects, you know. And when you do a podcast every week, you're eventually going to hit the same thing.
Exactly.
And being able to understand that moment in time, we're like, hey man, we've already talked about this like a lot. So
oh my God, I do that all the time.
We need to move on, and you got to find like a really cool, chill way to do it. That way, like you said, like you want it to look good,
right?
But you don't want to be like, hey man, like we're changing subjects. This is what we're going to talk about now. You got to be like smooth,
and natural, like like you find like whenever like someone starts hinting at something that you were going to bring up possibly, then you play into that. So it's just
that's what makes a good host, man. That's, you know, being able to do that.
Yeah, and that's tough, but I'm learning how to do it, and so and it's funny you mentioned that, because whenever I notice myself on a podcast talking about something that I've talked about like every podcast, in my mind I'm thinking that like, oh my God, dude, I just talked about that so if I have anyone following the podcast, they're going to be like, wow, this is like deja vu, man. Like I feel like you guys, you did talk about this. So, but anyways, so Daniel, are you excited to be on a podcast again?
Yes.
Dude, you're like super famous because of that naked story.
Oh my gosh. I never thought I would be famous for that. Like that was like the last thing that was on my mind the moment that was happening.
Right.
You know? Like the last thing that I would think of is, you know what, this scenario will make me famous. What I was thinking of at the moment was, I'm gonna get evicted. I'm gonna be homeless. I'm gonna have to like share, I don't know, a tree with Sunflower Child or something, like
Sunflower Child. See, and that what you just said is exactly my vision for our podcast. Is I'm very passionate about people. I've been like that just based on what I went through as a foster kid, and just I went through a lot of things, and I care about people so much, and that's my vision. I feel like that's what I was put here for, is to connect with everyday people. And when I was sitting down thinking about the show and what I wanted it to be, I had a lot of negative, like, this can make us famous. That's the dumbest. That's really dumb. Like, what does that have to do? And I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? It's kind of, I'm not actually chasing fame. I'm the opposite. I'm promoting people. It's like a people promotion channel. You got all these other shows that are just only targeting like the biggest name people, which I hope to be able to have some big people on. That would be exciting for me. But I really want this channel and this podcast to be built around the people, everyday people. So people I run into, you know, that are not famous. And you know what? Maybe like Daniel, like his story about, you know, his couch being on fire and he was butt naked putting it out. Maybe that'll make them famous, you know, people. And what I mean by that is people know about them, you know. And
that's awesome, man. That's
so
beautiful. No one, It's almost like you're not being selfish. You know what I'm saying? Like you're just trying to give everyone a platform, like you said before we started the podcast, man. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I'm hoping that takes off. I know it's a specific niche, and I feel like it could work. You always hear like from all the professionals out there, like you got to pick a specific niche to be it. Like, are you into electronics? Are you sports? And are you politics? And I kind of just like the openness. Like I would say mine's more like comedy, like interview kind of thing, but I'm definitely not politics or whatever. But what would you say yours is? Is it?
I mean, it leans towards politics, but I mean, I think our overarching theme on Talk Junkies is just the corporate oligarchy that runs the world, that runs the earth. There's just this overarching force that's guiding us to where we're going, you know? And those are just people who are filthy rich, you know? I mean, that's
globally.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the times when we have guests on, it's just to figure out what we could do to combat that but I mean, honestly, it's just spreading knowledge. That's our goal at Talk Junkies. Not truth, because I don't think anyone has truth or anyone knows truth. Because to say that you have truth is to say that you know something for certain. I think spreading knowledge is just like everyone has different types of knowledge. And we've had any range of people on our show, from a psychotherapist to David Icke to a guy named Dan Cox, who's a constitutional expert on Facebook. Just certain things like that. I mean, our goal is just to spread knowledge.
Right. So you guys are very like educational in some ways. Like you just want to bring interesting people in and give them the opportunity to, like I said before, share their expertise with people. And it may not be like the truth,
Right.
But I respect that. And I think for the most part, when people are tuning into a podcast, from what I've gathered from talking to people, is they love listening to experts. That's why they tune into podcasts. That's what gets their attention. I definitely like those things. I like the dumb ones, like the ones that just make no sense at all, and they're just talking randomly and making me laugh, and some people like that too. So that's it. The podcasting world's so unique, man. It's a vast world. It's huge, and I didn't realize that until I jumped in.
Yep.
I'm like, oh my God, dude! Like
it's still fairly new too. That's
yeah.
the crazy part.
And I get on, and I've never listened to podcasts before I did it, ironically. And I'll get on there and I'll be looking through the list of podcasts, and there's just thousands, hundreds of thousands of podcasts in the whole world. It's insane, dude. It's a huge world, but we're like a little fish in a ginormous ocean.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's still very popular, and you could still be successful. So that's why I'm doing it. So hopefully it all works out for both of us, man. And,
yeah. If not, it's something for our kids to look back on and like, hey, look what Dad did. Like that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's fun.
All of your opinions on everything.
Exactly, and it's a lot of fun. I love it. Looks like my screen timed out, so it's telling us it's time to go. We usually do an hour on our shows, so we keep it short and sweet. But is there anything you'd like to say to all of our viewers? Like give a little shout out on or a plug for your channel or whatever?
Oh yeah. Just where
can they find you?
Yeah, just find us on and thanks to this guy, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Podomatic, all that stuff. Just searching Talk Junkies on all of those. YouTube, obviously, Talk Junkies. That's where the video aspect comes in. You can see what all three of us look like as opposed to audio. And yeah, just tune in, and it's just really been a pleasure, Jason. Thanks for having me on, man. It's been great. I've shouted you out on our channel before,
yes,
and maybe one day, man, you'll have to come by.
I will.
And swing by and do it. I have to add like a fourth chair and another. I have the mic and the boom arm. I just got to get another set of.
I'll just bring my freaking arm. I'll just grab this thing and be like,
oh,
"Hey man, I got my arm."
But yeah, just come check us out, and whenever you come over, just let us know that you're from This Could Make Us Famous podcast. Yeah. We're completely different, but I think it's
awesome.
It is awesome, man. And
I love it.
Just meeting someone like Daniel, man. I never would have met Daniel if it wasn't for this podcast, and just walking into this room and just having just the energy that you have, and just how much just what you've experienced in your 24 years of life, man. Just to be able to know just a tiny little bit of that due to the podcast. That's what it's all about.
It is, man. Yeah. And that's what I love about all this is just getting to meet people, connecting with people, and getting to know their story. It's amazing, and I look forward to the future. And like you said, even if it's just something we do and it never goes anywhere really, I love doing it. It's opening doors that I never would imagine before, and it's pretty awesome. So who knows what the future will bring, but I know it's going to be good for you guys for sure, man. I
appreciate that, man.
I see it going very well for you guys. So, but anyways, if you guys are very interested in checking out their channel, you should subscribe. Talk Junkies on YouTube, and check them out on. They're on Anchor, and they're on pretty much all the podcasting platforms, or at least most of them. And check them out, guys. Support their channel. And do you guys have like a Patreon or any kind of?
No, yeah, man. I'm gonna wait till we get a little bit more friends to join our community. Honestly, right now. It's not about the money. So just having people tune in and listen to what our ideas are and what we have to say. So.
Right. I'm in the same boat. I don't have a Patreon yet, but one day I will, and one day we'll be successful. So here's to success.
Definitely, man.
Here's to a successful podcast. Yes, and Talk Junkies. Paul Weiss. That's it. Weiss or Weiss?
I mean, you could pronounce it Weiss, but it is Weiss.
Weiss.
I think the German way or the French Canadian way to say it would be Weiss, but it is Weiss. Yeah.
All right, Paul Weiss. Well, thanks, dude, for gracing us with your presence. And dude, I am super excited to have you on again.
Definitely.
And maybe next time we'll do something crazy, like some kind of fun challenge. It won't be hot because I don't think you do hot stuff, do you?
Oh, I do hot stuff, man, but I've retired from that.
Oh,
Casey,
we might have to bring him out of retirement, guys.
Casey Smoke Burger Challenge Burger, that put me in retirement.
Jeez. Wow. Well, we'll do something. So, but man, it's been good. We had some good conversation. Daniel, thanks for being on the show.
No problem.
And I got a lot of work to do, guys. I got to edit this thing and get it out there. Tomorrow's like my last day. So I pretty much edit the day after.
Definitely.
So, but guys, thanks for tuning in. I absolutely love all the fans out there. Thanks for being a part of the growth and the journey at This Can Make Us Famous podcast. And like I always say, guys, be good to one another, love your neighbor, and let's try to make this world a better place. You take it easy and stay tuned for the next podcast. It's going to be amazing.
Thanks for listening to the This Could Make Us Famous podcast. Want to help make someone famous? Have a story to share? Get in touch with us at facebook.com/This Could Make Us Famous. And be sure to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss a single episode.